All right, and today we're working on using the built-in file dialogues. And so to do this, there's a file out here called crime.zip. You can download that file and extract it. It's just a bunch of Excel files. And so we need several files to be able to work with, so this example can work. And having the same set of files would be helpful. This is the set of files I'm going to work with, so I'm downloading that and extracting it. And it just needs to be somewhere that we can refer to it from our code. Other than that, let's start with a brand new blank workbook. So, just make a new workbook. Blank workbook. Alt F11. Let's hit Alt F10. I don't want to make a chart. Delete the chart. That's Alt F11. Okay, so here's book one. It's a blank workbook. I have downloaded that set of files and extracted it. And let's just take a look at this idea of you're used to having the user, you're used to working with the built-in file dialog box. Anytime you want to open an Excel workbook, this thing pops up. Well, it turns out that this dialog box, the file open dialog box, let's say browse now. This thing right here, this is an object inside of the application. And we can control this separate from the way that the application normally controls it. And so we're going to be working with this object right here. Let me show you how to do it. It's kind of a slick thing. Go back. Go back. All right. So here I am on book one. I'm going to insert a module. And I inserted that in the wrong place. That went into my func res. Let's close that. Select this one. Insert a module. There we go. So now I have a new module inside of book one. So let's just call this file dialog. Okay, the book talks about there's some methods that are kind of the simplified version of this. I'm going to leave that to you in the book. We're going to see how to manipulate that object itself. So the first thing is I'm going to create an object variable that I can use to refer to it. So let me dim, I'll just call it FD for file dialog, as office.fileDialog. Okay, so I'm declaring a variable. How much memory does this variable use? Is it, like compared to like a number, like a long integer, is it a lot more, about the same, or less? What do you think? This is like for a whole file dialog. I think a lot more. It turns out it's exactly the same, depending on how many bits your operating system is. 32-bit operating system, it's actually, this takes more, but otherwise, 64-bit operating system is the same. Folks, what we're doing here is we are declaring an object variable. It's almost exactly the same as if we say this. If I say dim FD as object, can someone just kind of explain what's happening with this? What is this? What does this do? It makes a variable, it allocates some memory, it binds this nickname FD onto it, but give me a little bit more. What's special about the object variable, the data type?
You can put other objects or variables or constants within the object and then access them.
Okay, so that's pretty good. So what I can do is, what this does is it allows me to make a reference to an object. It turns out I can't use other variables or constants. It has to be an object. But all this does is it allocates enough memory to store the location of where some other object is in memory. It's just enough memory to store a location of where something is. Now, by saying office.fileDialog, let's just go back to object. If I say FD dot, I get no help here. It doesn't have any idea what kind of object I'm going to be working with. But if I tell it, no, it's not just any old object, that's this kind of object. Now when I say FD dot, it says, oh, well, there's some things I know how to do with the file dialog. And here's the list. That's the main reason that you want to actually give it a type here, besides just object. If after I get this built, I switch this back to object, it would still work exactly the same. The big deal is it allows me to get the help when I'm working on it. Okay. So this, all this does is it allocates the memory. To actually create one of these objects in memory, I do it like this. Set fd equal to application dot FileDialog. And then in parentheses, I tell it which kind of dialog I want. There's 4 to choose from. So if I'm just doing like open or save as, they figure these things are so common that you might just want to have those available to you. We're not going to work with these. It's really just like, it just says open up the open file dialog, open up the save as dialog. We're going to work today with both the file picker and the folder picker. Someone had a great name picking these names, a great time picking these names. This is the folder picker. Let's do the file picker to start with. Okay, so now this then actually create an instance of the object. And connect the variable to it. Okay, so now at this point we could open it. In fact, fd.show. That should bring that file dialog up. Now we're not doing anything with it. The whole idea is that we want the user to be able to choose some file. We're going to pick a file, after all. It's called the file picker. And that's going to let them pick it. At this point, we haven't done anything to figure out what they've picked, but that should actually let them pick it. So let's run it and see if it works. There it is. So we've now brought this up. You know, if I come and choose some Excel workbook and say, okay, is it going to open that workbook? No, because all it's doing at this point is it's just letting us find out which one the user chose. What did the user choose? So it seems a little bit weird that would come up and then not do anything, but you're the programmer. You've got to decide what you want to do with it. And so let's see how to work with it. The way we tell which one was selected is a little bit complicated. That's why we have a class on this particular question here. No stretching. Yeah, someone else was stretching. Hey, quit stretching. Call them. All right. All right, so let's take a look. First of all, is that this fd show returns a value. It's a method. It actually shows an output, but it returns a value. So let's do a debug.print of that. See what that should just show us what it returns. You might think it would return the file name that got chosen, but it doesn't. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to choose. In fact, I'm going to go find my downloads where I extracted that crime file. Did I extract it yet? I thought I extracted it. Crime, here it is. Crime folder. I'm going to choose Alabama. Say OK, and let's see what it prints. It printed -1. That's not very helpful. Let's see what happens if I do something different. I'm going to run it again. I'm going to choose Alabama. And this time I'm going to cancel. And that prints 0. So what's it really returning? It's returning true or false. That's how I can tell, did the user press OK or did the user press cancel? And so let's do this. We can just use that as an if statement. If fd show, and you can say, if it makes you comfortable to say equals true, you can do that, or you can just leave it fd show because it is itself either true or false. Then we're going to do something. So here, tour, T-R. At this point, we know that the user pressed OK. Well, or clicked OK, depending if they have a tablet or a mouse. Anyway, OK was activated. So now we got to figure out, how are we going to figure out which file they've selected? I'm debating on how to show this to you. Let's do it this way. First of all, it might be nice for us to say, I don't want to just open one of these files. I want to open several of these files. let's let the user pick multiple ones. Okay, go ahead and say okay. Click this one and then click that one. Or maybe control click. Oh, control click lets me do it. Okay, so the user can already choose multiple ones. Apparently that's the default behavior. That's okay, I didn't know that. All right, so now I've selected multiple ones of these. I'd like to be able to see how do I have access to which ones were selected. So I'm going to come back to my code, I believe. And let me put a breakpoint right here. Folks, how do you write a breakpoint into your code? Like instead of clicking on a breakpoint, you know how to write it there? There's a keyword stop. That will just take you into break mode when it hits the stop. That's kind of convenient. Okay, so now I'm going to select several of these. I'll say okay. All right. So right now this whole thing's still loaded in memory. The dialog box is still in memory. I have access to all the methods of it. It's just right here. So let me come to the immediate window and let's just play with fd dot. Now there's a collection called selected items. We talked about collections. There's a collection called selected items. So I can ask for selected items sub 1, and if I print it, it'll give me the full path to that selected file. If I ask for number 2, it'll give me the path to the second one. So the way the FileDialog box works is it has this array, this collection called selected items. It's just a list of everything the user selected. Is it in the order in which they selected them? No. Whatever order they selected them in, it just kind of starts from the top and says, those are the ones that are selected. So it'd be kind of neat if you can tell which order they selected them, but you can't. You just get the list that they selected. Right, I could ask for the count of this. It would tell me there are 6 items selected. So let's go ahead and let's just make it so we can print those out. So let me declare a variable up here, dim x as an integer. Here we will say for x equals 1 to the count of the selected items. Debug.print the xth item. I'll disable my breakpoint. And so now we're only going to print what is selected if the user clicks OK. Then we'll print the names of the items that the user has selected. Pretty good. We'll go ahead and run that, make sure it works. For some reason, we don't want to go back. I wanted to go back there. And so, whichever ones we had selected, it just prints them off. Okay, how are we doing so far, folks? Okay? There's some other things that we can do. What if we don't want the user to be able to select multiple items? Well, there's just a property, fd dot, then what's it called? Allow multi-select. That's either true or false. So if you set that equal to false, then the user won't be able to select multiple ones. Try to select them all, and it just only selects one at a time. Select down the end, hit Control A, doesn't do anything. Range, Control, Shift, nothing. Just get one at a time. And that should have still printed off just the one that I had selected. Should put it right here, Tennessee. Some other things I have to control as well. So maybe you'll notice that when I run this, what does it say on the button? It says Open. Well, what if I don't want to? What if I'm not trying to open buttons? What if I'm open files? What if I'm trying to pick files to delete? I don't want it to say open. Well, we can change that too. Go back. So before I open it, fd dot button name equals delete. I can also set the title. fd dot title equals select the workbooks you want to delete. Is there a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes when we work with arrays, the first index is 0. How can we get to 1 in this case?
The question is, we're talking about arrays, and we're going to talk in detail about arrays starting Monday, but you say, hey, when we work with arrays, we start at 0, how come this one starts at 1? And the answer is, it's not an array, it's a collection. That may not be a very satisfying answer. A collection is an object. It's got methods, it has properties. An array is just a set of variables. It's just a bunch of variables. There's no methods, there's no objects involved, there's no properties, it's just the variables. And so it's a different thing. And so it behaves differently. Okay. Questions?
So the button name, where's that? Because where's that show up?
So let's take a look. So it says open here until I've actually selected one.
Oh, okay.
And as soon as because if I'm like here on a folder, I want it to say open.
Okay.
Here, it would be kind of nice if it goes back to delete. It doesn't quite know what to say here, but as soon as I selected one, it goes, aha.
Okay.
Now you got something to delete. And it comes up here and says,
Thank you.
incidentally, how do we delete that file? Do you want to see? Yeah, it's a great word. Instead of printing it, kill. And that will just delete that file off the hard disk. Boom, it's gone. Here's proof. Alabama. Delete. Learn again. Alabama's gone. So we could be deleting here, and you might use it this way. You might just say, "Hey, I'm going to open this up and have it do whatever it does right here." But what I've found is that most often, there are lots of times that I need to get a list of files to work with, and so I'm going to leave this example as is. I'm going to copy it and make another one. Rather than writing all this code around it, to kind of be able to use this thing, I just want to have a list. Just have one function that gets me a list of the files to open. And so, let me paste this in. I'm going to change this now from a I copied this. I'm going to change it from a sub to a function. And I'm going to have it return a collection. So all this is going to be the same. Now there's some things that I might want to allow myself to customize. And so I could put parameters in here to be passed in. So I'll go ahead and put at least one here so you get the idea. Title as a string. And then I'm going to set the FileDialog's title to whatever got passed in. Since this is going to be like, instead of calling this FileDialog, I'm going to call this select files. And so my button name, instead of delete, maybe I'll change to select. So this is select files in the plural. I'm going to set multi-select to true. I want to be able to select multiple ones. That should do the trick. Now, at this point, I'm still deleting. That'd be pretty bad to run this by mistake because I'm trying to select those that I'm deleting. So instead of deleting them, here's what I want to do. I want to build another collection that I can control that has these items in it and then pass that back to whoever called the function. So to do that, I'm going to need another variable here. I'm going to dim. We'll just call it C as a collection. And if the user actually clicks OK, so down here at this point the user has clicked OK, I'm going to say then set C equal to a new collection. Remember, when I declare the variable, it only allocates enough memory to hold a reference to some other object. I've got to do something to create the object. With the file dialog box, here's how I create the file dialog. Here's how I create a new collection and then bind that variable C onto that collection. So now, instead of killing these file names, I'm just going to say C.add. I'm going to add all those items into that collection, and then I'm just going to return the collection. How do I tell a function to return a value? It's kind of a weird way. What do I do?
Set the function equal to that.
Yep, set the name of the function equal to what I want it to return. Now, if this was just a primitive, I would just come here and say name of the function equals 5 or 6 or some value. But it's an object, so I have to say what? Set select files equal to C. So now I've created a function called select files. I can have a sub procedure here, test select files. Dem file list has a collection. Set file list equal to what? What do I want to set file list equal to? Select files. When I have a function called, I better put a title on here. So now we're going to set the file list equal to whatever select files returns. Select files is expecting a title, so I have to give it a title. So that's what should show up there. And it should just return whatever we have. So we need a way to be able to see that. We're going to x as an integer. Where x equals 1 to file list.count. Next. Debug.print. File list. X. Now, I realize that we were printing file names out just a little while before, but now I want to see that all the code that you're working with at this point, because we built this function around this file dialog box, all we have to say is select files, give it a title, and that will create a collection, bind it onto this, and allow me to work with it. So we'll run my test procedure, select some files, and I'm curious as to why it doesn't go back to my, and then it's printed these off. Questions?
I have a question. There is a problem with my file dialog. The word delete on the button appears only after I selected this file.
Yes. Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look back at that example. So this file dialog where we're deleting, here, let me go ahead and run that. So that's
it.
So here it says
It's
open.
open, and then I have to click, and then it changes to delete.
Right. Yeah, that's actually, I think that's
How
the
can I
intended
change
that's the intended behavior.
It had to appear delete from the beginning.
Ooh, you're so needy. First, let me explain.
It's not me, it's my client.
Your clients, well, they're paying you, so they're allowed to be needy. So I'll show you here in just a second what you might be able to do. But let me first explain to you why it says open there. Until you have something selected, if I was to go up a folder, then if I don't want to say delete here, because it'd be like delete the whole folder. I don't want that. And so it should say open here, but it's when I go into it, then it goes. See, it's got this one selected. Why does it have that one? I'm not sure why it has that one selected. Is it because I was just on it? I don't know. Last notes. Yeah, so none of these are selected. They go up, go back into crime. Yeah, none of them are selected. Okay. Until I select one, that's what it is. So the way you could, I think, get this to delete is by telling it actually select that one to start with. So you can tell it a particular file to select when it opens. So let's just see how to do that. So I've got the file dialog created here. FD dot, what's it called? Initial file name equals, and then if I give it something, that should start me somewhere. That should actually make sure I start in that location and have that thing selected. Now, it would take something a little more elegant here to figure out what's the right one to start with. But let's see if that does the trick. Yeah, so it comes up, Arkansas is selected, and it says delete. Kind of surprised it didn't actually show this as selected here as well. But at least it has that one. That one really is selected, and it starts off with delete. Okay. Only one more thing I want to do with this example before we move on to the folder picker. So, there's one more kind of important thing, and that is that I can specify which files I want to even show in the dialog box. Right now it's showing everything. And so, if I come here, right before I show it, FD dot, there's a thing called a filter. So filters, it's an object, so it's a property that refers to an object, and it's got a method called add. So I can add a filter onto this. So the filter I'm going to add here is a description, Excel files, and then I give it the extension that I want to show as well. So I can tell it star.xlsx, semicolon, star.xlsm. And so by adding that filter on, that's going to make that as a filter. That's what's going to be there. If I run my example now, and here's that filter, and it should show only those kinds of files. If I go somewhere else, it won't have those kinds of files. Let me just go ahead and extend that a little bit to say, let's put on two kinds of filters. Let's put on Excel files and let's put on text files. So maybe this is just going to be star.txt and star.csv. And you can put as many as you want. Just separate them with semicolons. Now, if I want to, I can tell it which one I want to have selected. fd.filterIndex. Now, it's going to have one there already. So all files is there. And then we're going to have these other two. So we want text files to start. That would be the third one. Filter index starts counting at 1. So now this should come up with text files selected. I should be able to choose Excel files and have those show. No text files. I change this to Excel files. Displays the Excel files. Well, what if I don't want the user to be able to choose all files? That's possible too. All I have to do for that is before I start adding, say fd.filters. Any thoughts? What would I do? Filters is an object. Where would I look? There's a method called clear. So I'll start off by clearing all the filters. I'll add in the ones that I want. Now, instead of the filter index being 3, it's going to be 2, because I've only got 2 filters to start with. I'll run this one. I'm on text. I can change to Excel, but there's no option to go to all files. I think the user can still put in one here if they want to. A star.star. Yeah, so the user can still put in their own filter, but it's not going to be one of the ones they can choose. Question?
So I'm running into an error. I cancel that.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Let's get there. So object variable not set. object variable or with block variable not set. It's saying you're trying to refer to an object, and this object doesn't exist. Why doesn't the object exist? It's happening right here on this line right here. I'm saying, listen, I've got a collection here called file list. It's just a variable. It's not a collection. It's an object variable. It's intended to refer to a collection. That's going to equal whatever this function returns. Well, when does that function return a collection? That function returns a collection only when what? Yeah, if the user never presses OK, that collection never gets built. So we have two options. There's two ways we could handle this. One is we could send back a collection regardless of whether anything's been added to it. We can send back an empty collection. Or we can just expect the user of this function to check to see if it's nothing. Because until an object variable is bound onto an object, it has the key value of nothing. Let's take a look at that approach. So what I would do here is I would set that and I would say if file list is nothing, and exit sub. This is nothing is a keyword built into VBA that allows you to tell if an object variable has not been bound onto any object. Actually, if it is not currently bound onto any object. It could be bound and then unbound, it will still be nothing. If it's not currently bound onto an object, it will be nothing. It doesn't equal nothing, but it can be it is nothing. Different from being equal. So now if I run this and press cancel, I don't get an error because it goes, oh, the object's not bound onto anything, better get out of here. Okay. Anything else on this example? Yeah.
What's the opposite of that? Like, is something.
Is something, yeah. It's if file list is something.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, not at all.
No.
Go back to nothing. It's actually not is nothing. Not NOT. So this whole thing is going to be true or false. And so you can flip it with a not. You can't put the not in here anywhere. It'd be nice to say if file list is not nothing. Well, that's not so nice either. Yeah. Almost is something. I'd like is something. The trouble is that is, what it's really doing is checking to see if I have two objects, if they're both pointing at the same, if these two object variables are pointing at the same object, is will tell me those two object variables are pointing at the same object. So nothing is really a special object that all object variables get initialized to when they're created. So
it is something.
Actually, nothing is something.
Right.
It's not just that it's something, it's that nothing is something. That nothing is an object. It's kind of a strange thing. Okay. That's the opposite. Not whatever object is. Or over here you could say it equals false. This would do it as well. Either way would evaluate the same. Okay. So here's the next thing that's kind of a common thing that we would need to do. And the question is, can we do it in 8 minutes? I think the answer is yes. I'd like to pick a folder and then be able to work with the set of files that's in the folder, right? So rather than coming here and saying, I want to come and pick every single file, just pick the crime folder and bring me all the files that are in that folder. So we're pretty close already with select files. So I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to change it to say select files in folder. We've got another function here. We're going to call this select files in folder. It's still going to return a collection of files, but the way it figures it out is by the user picking a folder, and then it returns the files that are in. With the title as string, that's fine. All right, so now instead of the file picker, it's going to be the folder picker. It turns out the folder picker can only pick one folder. It'd be kind of nice if you could pick multiple folders, but it can't. And so this whole notion of multi-select is irrelevant when I've created the file dialog as a folder picker. I can still change the button name. I can still change the title. I can still do all this with filters. But since we're choosing folders, I'm going to get rid of all this filtering too. It might be nice just to only see a certain kind of file inside that folder, but we're gonna just pick the whole folder. Just show everything's in that folder. Same thing, if the user clicked OK, we'll be over here. We still want to create a collection here, but now what's going to be in my selected items? Let me go ahead and rebuild my stop right here, and we'll get to that point and we'll play with it. So what have I done? I've deleted all the stuff about filters. And I've changed this from a FileDialog, from a file picker to the folder picker. Is that all I changed? Yeah. I changed the name, I changed the folder picker, I got rid of the, and multi-select. Did I get rid of it? I just changed it to false. Did I get rid of it? Yeah. Oh, I didn't mean to get rid of it. In fact, I shouldn't get rid of it. Well, the default will be okay here. Let's just go ahead and leave it on there, but set it to false. All right, so let's create a sub-procedure to play with this one. Subfolder test. In fact, again, something really similar to what we had here. I'm going to copy the guts out of the other one. Now we're going to call, instead of select files, we're going to call select files and folder. Choose your files. The file list is nothing, so that all looks okay. All right. Now we're not yet returning what we need to return, but we've got a stop down here in the code. So after we've selected a folder and we've hit the stop, I want to get right there and then play with the object. Argument is not optional. Set select files. Oh, it's not. I got to change the name of the function. So set the function. It's actually the one thing I really dislike about using the function name. Set the return value. So when you change the name of the function, you have to change everywhere you say this is the return value. That whole 8-minute thing just got a little less certain. I don't think I even saved yet. Look, it still says book 1. 5 minutes to go. Well, let's see if it recovers. Something's there. Subfolder test is nothing. That looks pretty good. Yeah, we got pretty well there. Let me go ahead and just do those changes. Let me save actually before we do anything else. Save as, browse, up. Documents, that's fine. FileDialog. We're going to all of 60. XLSM. All right, so I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to get myself to the folder picker quickly. Still saving. Hopefully, I can do this. Select files. Oh, my folder test actually got started. Wow, I got almost all of it. What am I missing? Folder test. I don't think I lost anything. That's amazing. Okay. Choose your files. File list. Did my set files and select files? Okay. Great. Okay, so there's my folder test. I'm declaring my collection. I'm setting it equal to whatever this returns. So I'm thinking I should be able, I've got my stop here still. So I should be able to run my folder test and get to that point. Okay, good. So now I'm selecting a folder. Data stacks, great folder. Say select. Should hit that breakpoint. Did it hit that breakpoint for you? My computer seems really slow. Okay, so here we go. So I think we still have, even though you can only select one thing, selected, I still use the selected items to figure out what's selected. I don't have to worry about the count because there's only one. It can't be more than one. And if the user selected OK, then there's going to be one item in it. Okay, so now the question is, how do I figure out what are all the items inside of that folder? So what's inside of my selected items, sub 1, is going to be the full path to that folder. Here it is, folks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to need another variable that I'm going to call file name. Dim file name as a string. I'm going to say file name equals dir. dir goes back to the very early days of computing. If I wanted to see the list, a command prompt, if I wanted to see the list of files in a folder, I would type dir. It's short for directory. Doing directory listing for the files that are in this folder. In the very early days, there were no folders. It was just one big pile of files. And so I'm going to ask for the directory from that path. And it will set file name equal to the very first file in that list. It will only give you one file name. So then I am going to set up a loop. Do while file name, do until file name equals a zero-length string. I have to add one more thing onto this. Okay, so let's get to this point. That should be loop, not next. Okay, so let's look at what's in file name right now. File name should have. I didn't have anything because I haven't actually given it. All right, folks, why don't we pause here? We're out of time. Let me finish this example, and I'll post it. This loop will actually allow us to go through all the files in that folder, add them into the collection, and send that list back. Question?
Like, I'm having a hard time seeing the use of, like, when you would use this folder picker file folder name. When would you use these?
Okay, so you will use these for the database project coming up. But the idea is you're going to say to the user is going to say, listen, I've got data in all these files. In fact, we're going to use this set of files that we downloaded. We need to open up each one of these Excel files individually, get the data out of them, and push them off to a database. So you're giving the user a way to say, these are the files I want. The two ways we looked at today was, one, let the user pick them individually, and what we're working on now is let the user pick a folder, and then just bring back all the files that are in the folder. Okay. Other question?
Yeah, question or comment. The example book, you just use a different way to use the FileDialog with statement.
Yeah. The with statement just is in the book. Instead of setting it to an object variable, you just say with. I prefer the syntax where I have an object name bound to it. But all the stuff is the same. One more question, we'll dismiss.
Yeah, sorry. Filters. I can get lost in filters with select by.
Good news is that the book covers it really well. If you want to come talk to me, I'll take you through it. Thanks for coming, folks. Class dismissed. Okay, so it turns out that what we need to do for the doing this directory is that we have to specify a filter. And so let's take a look at what is in our selected items right here. So selected items is just up to that folder, so we're going to concatenate onto the end of this a backslash and a star. And that should give us then a file name. That should give us everything in there. And we can say star.txt just for text file or txt, star.xlsm just for macro-enabled workbooks. And that should now give us a file name. It still doesn't. So we'll take a look. All right, so the problem is I'm not really sure if there are any files in that folder. So let's go ahead and finish off this example. And let's run it again, picking one that we know we've got some files in. Okay, so instead of data stacks, I'm going to come to my downloads, go to crime, and select that folder. And that should take us to that breakpoint here, for too long. All right, so now
let's go ahead and go through this. Let's take a look at that file name. Hopefully we got a file name there. Okay, so now we've got the file name. So the dir gives us, we specify the path as well as some filter here to say what do we want to show, and that will return then just the first one. So now we're going to continue to do this as long as the file name is equal to something, as long as it's not a zero-length string. And then at the end of this loop we will control it by saying file name equals dir. If I don't supply any arguments, then it remembers the last directory list that it built, and then it just gives me the next file off of that. So now I'm going to go ahead right here and add that file name into the collection. So I'm going to say c.add file name. And since the file name is only the file name, not actually the path, let's go ahead and concatenate on the path so that we bring back a full path the way we did in the other example. So there's the path concatenated with a slash, a backslash concatenated with the file name. And so now as we step through this, we'll continue to do that as long as there's a file name. And you'll notice that our file name is changing each time. Now we're on Connecticut. Got the next file name now. Now we're on Delaware. And that will run then all the way through. Go ahead and take off the stop here. And that should run all the way through. And then we should print those off. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our test one more time. We will select the crime folder. And then that should print off all of those files that have information about crimes. Again, I'm not quite sure why mine takes so long to get back there, but here it has printed those off. So again, the whole idea here is we set file name equal to the dir function, specifying the folder as well as the filter as one string, and then subsequent calls to that dir without specifying it will just give me the next file off the list, the next file off the list, until we're done, and at that point it returns a zero-length string. And since that's what we're checking for to get out of this loop, that lets us out of the loop. And so now our select files in folder will allow me to select a folder and bring back the collection of files that are inside that folder. All right, that does it.